she lied, alright? The more you get to know her, the more lies you get to uncover. Do you lie? Anaïs Nin kept several diaries simultaneously, color-coded by the levels of explosive frankness. The more dangerous one was, the better it had to be hidden. And for a good reason. Once she let Henry Miller, the brutal beast that he was, on paper anyway, read her purple diary. He could not go through with it. It was too raw, too honest. It was not trying to paint a pretty picture. Not even of him. In her real journals, she was confiding, with the kind of trust one has to prove to deserve. Such trust that most people do not even grant themselves, repressing their very own secret thoughts. Where it's a normal friendship, it would cost months and years of colossal emotional and temporal commitment to a person to even stand a chance of knowing them so deeply over such long stretches of time. To see their inner tribulations result in actions that cause reactions which all ripple and go on indefinitely, all the while in turn affecting their feelings too, as well as their understanding of the world and of themselves. They say things they don't mean out of polite carefulness until the urge for truth assumes more value. Unexpurgated diaries of Anaïs are in some sense better than observing a close friend. It is fantastical to be able to see these year-long progressions laid bare before you. Their truth is penetratingly valuable, just as real as Anaïs was capable of being with herself. Somewhere shortly after the rise of the internet, online creators tried and triggered the very same voyeuristic instincts. That was their original allure, allowing viewers into their unmanufactured private world, overruling the convention of initial trust building. Only the demise of its unmanufactured aspect seemed unavoidable. Influencers themselves became followers of the newly established social media perfection. So the juiciest niche remains largely unfilled. Is it possible to live fully, have profound connections with people, earn and maintain their love and trust, all while being capable of sincerity about your thoughts and feelings, first and foremost with yourself, and to continuously share them in their entirety with the world? Perhaps not within one lifetime. Perhaps Anaïs had to die for her very best work to come out. So that is the issue with the originally published journals of Anaïs. The people whom she loved and her concern for them. This turned the very first published diary into a kind of a lie, her truth heavily reduced to its safest form. It's all true emotionally, they would all repeat in unison, including Anaïs herself. Only it was a half-truth at best, and therefore fiction. It excluded the first big, masterful lie, her adultery. To whom? Well, that's exactly right. She does not mention her husband, just as though she has never been married in the first place. Even though the journals were published 3.5 decades after Henry Miller first stepped into her house in Lucienne. At first, it reads as though, perhaps, the presence of Hugh, her banker husband whom she married at the age of 20, was less exciting to write about, too mundane in comparison with the firework of Miller. But, of course, Hugh simply disallowed her to mention him. He took his privacy rather seriously, wishing for his professional and personal lives to be completely separate. Therefore, the reality of their marriage was not to be made public. As a result, the Anaïs presented to the readers at the time, while honest about her feelings, was missing critical context. She appeared as an impossibly independent woman floating through life on her own dime. When some feminists found out she had a husband who supported her financially, they rebelled, saying her diaries were a lie. They accused her of masquerading as a self-made bohemian while actually relying on immense income. Others sniped at her ultra-feminine style, the flowing dresses and flirtatious manner, as if she undermined the women's movement by not fitting the mold of a serious activist. She had never set out to be a political figurehead. In fact, she often distanced herself from the feminist movement's politics, even while her work undeniably inspired many women. Her values were rooted in the individual, personal freedom, artistic expression, inner growth. Anaïs's ethics were the ethics of art. Her early published works were her efforts to share her stories and meanings without giving away those of others. The trouble is, if not for her profound and true account of her own life, someone like me would never get to receive the enormous gift of artistic friendship she had left behind. Henry&June came out in 1986, after not only Anaïs but now also Hugh had died, being the first time any of her raw diaries were published. This unexpurgated diary corresponded temporally with that first expurgated one, published 20 years earlier. Henry&June was a spiritual experience for me, in part because it was not abstract, not just the emotional truth, but the real, tangible truth with great transporting power.
I am the other face of you. I am the other face of you. I am the other face of you.
As I was living through all the same life Anaïs did in our 20s, I felt no rush and even a slight hesitation to learn about what was to come. For months, as I reread Henry&June over and over, I kept postponing the time I would learn about the far rest of her life. Our resemblance was so uncanny that following in her footsteps seemed unavoidable. There must be a good reason people need not know their future. One simply cannot. Once you do, you employ judgment and therefore change its course. It's fragile.
And we passed an old-fashioned garage. I don't think we have many of them anymore. But it was a garage where people parked their cars and also had work done on, mechanical work. And just in passing, she said, "Oh, I know this place very well. I have sex with all the men there." That's how she was.
It was only days ago that I finally did it, and I was repulsed. It felt wrong.
A wooden box marked on the top, Lies, and in it was a card catalog, so she could keep straight her stories about where she was, at what time, and with whom she was supposed to be.
She chose wrong, I thought. When she was 44, with Henry Miller long out of the picture, she fell in yet another brand new love with a brand new Rupert Paul, a 28-year-old Hollywood actor. That would not have been particularly radical if not for the act of bigamy she did not shy away from. For 11 years, the two husbands remained secret from one another. With each passing year, the stakes rose, legal risks and the toll of lying, as she flew coast to coast, splitting her life in two. In the most mundane way, the lie ended. Both Hugo and Rupert unknowingly claimed her as a dependent on their tax returns. The IRS red flag brought the secret crashing down. To avoid bigamy charges, Anaïs annulled her marriage to Rupert Paul in 1966. Nevertheless, Nin and Paul continued to live together as if they were married until her death. According to Barbara Croft, prior to her death, Nin had written to Guiler asking for forgiveness. He responded by writing how meaningful his life had been because of her. The parts of us that must be harnessed, she had let them run wild. But I understood. She lived so others could now build on the action-reaction chains she created.
I realize now that we did have an arrangement, Anaïs and I, that she would tell me stories and I would pretend to believe them. and this worked. It worked very well. It was good for Anaïs and it was all right for me.